Genesis.
Hey, music fans, and welcome back to our Genesis album review series. Today, we are going to be reviewing the final Genesis album with Peter Gabriel, entitled The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. It is a behemoth of a double album with a confusing story and a very elaborate stage show that happened back in the day. But I'm very excited to get to discuss this album because there's a lot to discuss here. Joining me is going to be Jacob Martin. He is going to be he's on our series here, and then we have Nick Yarambensky from Townsend 505 here as well, so that we can provide some more discussion instead of just two people. He joined us on the Foxtrot review as well. So, how are you guys doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good.
Let's see. Before we get into this album real quick, well, first of all, I'm going to provide a little bit of
Background information.
Okay, so this had just released Selling England by the Pound, and now what are they going to do? Well, it turns out that they decided that they wanted to record at the same farmhouse or whatever house that Led Zeppelin recorded Led Zeppelin 4 at the Grange. And so they went down there to record. And Phil Collins, I saw an interview where Phil Collins was describing working at his house. He said he hated it because there was rats everywhere. And it was a mess. But the guys in Genesis were really big fans of Led Zeppelin, so get kind of more of the sound that Led Zeppelin was getting. They did in the exact same house. About this time, though, Peter Gabriel and his wife, their son was very sick, and they almost lost him. And so Peter Gabriel, when during the sessions of this album, often wouldn't show up because he wanted to be there for his kid. And eventually, the kid made it, thankfully. But apparently the rest of the members of the band weren't very kind to him and were very angry at him for not being at the studio. And Mike Rutherford now says that he's really sorry that he did that because he realized what Peter was going through. That plus kind of creative tensions in the band. Plus there was a huge elaborate stage show that happened with this album that I'll probably talk a little bit about as we go through. That was too much for the other members and different creative things. And so Peter Gabriel, after this album, decided that he was going to leave the band and work more as a solo artist. And that worked because they got the greatest possible replacement singer for him. And Peter Gabriel had a successful solo career, and Genesis went on to become successful as well. So it was a win-win situation. But right now here we are going to talk about what they made in that house, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. So do you guys have any kind of general thoughts about this album? Like, it's a very confusing album, I must say.
Well, my brief thoughts. I'll go first since I'm the guest. Well, but for me, even joining you guys for this review, that should tell you how much I like this album. Musically, this is one of the. Musically, this is a fantastic album. I think all four of the musicians are stepping it up, and I think Peter Gabriel sings phenomenally. Written wise, I will say it does confuse me, but I don't focus on the concept or the story of it. I just concern of how great the music is, which does not disappoint.
All right. So I first listened to this album in preparation for the stream, not knowing what to expect. I knew it was a concept album, a double album even. And, I'm not too big. Concept albums can be a hit and miss for me. If I'm into the story and concept, I love it. If not, I'll just find it too weird and pretentious. So when I first listened to this album, I'm like, musically, this might be the best Genesis album so far. And then when I was listening to it the first time, I'm like, what the heck is going on with this story? I have no idea what's going on. Luckily, there is a series of illustration videos on YouTube. I'm going to look up the name of the YouTube channel real fast. Nathaniel Barlam is the name of the YouTuber who made the illustrations. And I actually watched those just before this recording, which has the music on the album mixed with visual on what the concept of the album is. So the second time I was able to follow the story a bit better.
Still confusing though.
Yeah, especially the ending. I can't really explain the ending.
The ending is pretty open-ended.
But yeah, I do like this album a lot more the second time. Now the question is this my favorite Genesis album? I have to wait and see.
You will have to find out. I will say, if you think that it's pretentious, you've been taken for a ride. That's a lyric from the album.
Yeah, it is. That's on the final song.
Yep. Okay, so let's go ahead and dig right in. We are going to try to cover the entire double album in one video. Sometimes we do 2 parts with double albums, but we're going to attempt to do the whole thing in one video. The first track on the album, and whenever we do it, I'll kind of explain what's going on in the story, and then we'll each go through and give our review of the song. That's how the format will go. So the first song is called "The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway," and what's going on in the story here is it is setting the story, or like the kind of setting the scene in New York City, where we meet a punk named Rael who just spray painted his name on the subway wall, and he's a gang member, and he is about to get punished for what he did, pretty much.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great opening track to the album. I like the chorus. And the lamb lies down on Broadway. Very grand opening to the song. I love the piano beginning to it. The piano reminds me of the opening to Death on Two Legs from Queen's debut. Not debut. Queen's the Night the Opera album. Yeah, this is a fantastic opening track.
Yeah, I love the piano opening. It's just kind of like fades in, and it's like. And then you get Phil's drumming in, and it builds up with the "And the Lamb lies down on Broadway," and Mike Rutherford's bass. Mike Rutherford has a huge bass sound on this album. It's amazing. And then Phil's drumming on this is great. Peter Gabriel's vocal performance is amazing. He really becomes the character of Rael, especially whenever he sings that line, "Rael Imperial Eversoken." When he sings that, it's like kind of like the grand entrance of the character. I think it's a really good opening. And one funny thing about this album, there are so many pop culture references on this album. There's a lot of like blink twice and you'll miss it pop culture references. The last few lines of this song are lifted directly from a song called "On Broadway" by the Rifters, which was a famous song in the
it's like in the early 60s.
like an early 60s song.
Yeah, even when I first heard this song, I picked up the "On Broadway" reference. I'm like, okay, that's a cool little callback. That is what I like to call sampling done right.
Yes.
Don't let Vanilla Ice do it.
No.
But yeah, this is a great song. Even when I first listened to the album, this was one of my favorites on the album. Getting the story in context, it's a great opening to the story. It sets up the character. I love the fact that the song goes into full detail about New York City with the different lines in the song. then musically this song is really epic. And then I must say, on all of the, I'll just say this right now, out of all the Peter Gabriel led Genesis albums, this is his best album vocally. He really goes all out on this album. You can tell this was a passion project for him, and I really appreciate that about this album.
This is kind of his baby. Like most of the songs on this album are written by like just him. Okay, so now we're going to get into our next song, and we'll kind of talk about the next two songs at the same time because they kind of go hand in hand, and that is Fly on a Windshield and the Broadway Melody of 1974. So in this, or these set of songs, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, so like this Lamb lies down on, it's confusing. The Lamb lies down on Broadway, and that sets off some kind of cataclysmic event where like this beam of light comes down from the sky and is swallowing up all of New York City, but nobody sees it because it's really just like a punishment for what Rael did. It's kind of, I kind of think of it like Groundhog Day, where maybe Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray gets trapped in the same day, but it's for being a jerk. But instead, Rael, for being a punk, is getting sent to Mirror Manhattan, apparently. And this beam of light is going towards him. He's trying to run away from it, but he knows that it's going to hit him eventually, like eventually a fly will get hit by a windshield passing by. And when the fly does hit the windshield, oh boy, that's a cool moment on the album. But apparently, because they recorded this at Headley Grange, Phil said that he wanted to get the drum sound of Led Zeppelin's "When the Levee Breaks" on this song.
That's interesting. Well, I'll talk about one than the other. The first song, I forgot the name of it already.
Fly on the Windshield.
Fly on the Windshield. I think Fly on the Windshield is, I think it's a pretty good song. I think it's a great song in the mix of the album. Probably not one of my favorites from this album, but I think it's pretty good. But it works perfectly with Broadway Medley of 1974. That song was awesome. Very catchy. I think this definitely the better of the two. I think the Broadway of Medley of 1974 definitely helps the other song.
Yeah. Fly on the Windshield just kind of, it starts off very soft. He's like, what's going to happen? I'm just sitting here waiting for, like a fly, waiting for the hit by the windshield. And then like you hear, the drums come in big and that grand chord comes in, and that leads right into the Broadway Melody of 1974. Oh man, really cool. Epic drumming in the background, and man, so many pop culture references in this song. Kind of talking about like all of the things that are going on in New York while Rael is getting transported to this other world. References to like, I know there's a reference like Groucho Marx, and I'm not going to list through all of them, but there's a lot of them on this song. And Peter Gabriel's vocals are very good on this song. He's really just like singing into it.
All right, so for me, I'm kind of hit and miss on this song. As far as the story goes, you got to have both songs together, because if not, you'll be like, what the heck is this? Fly on a Windshield on its own is just okay. But the Broadway track is actually really cool. That's the standout of the two. I love where all the parts just gel together to make a really interesting track. Now, I think on its own terms, I think both are among the weaker songs on the album. But as far as setting up like the weirdness of the story, I think it's vital to get to the rest of the madness on this album. So it's like, to me, it's like an important track, but it's one of the weaker tracks at the same time. There's a lot more memorable songs when we get to some of the weirder stuff on this album.
Okay, so the next song is called Cuckoo Cocoon. And this is the part of the story where Rael wakes up in a place that seems oddly familiar, but it's also very different. We're going to call it Mirror Manhattan, just for the sake of this video, which I think that's kind of the unofficial name it was given. But he's in some kind of cocoon that he feels oddly safe, but also very wary of what's around him.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a great song. You cocoon, ba-ba-bum, ba-bum, bum, bum. I think that's another good song on the album. Again, this isn't like one of my favorites off this album, but yeah, I thought this was a really good song.
I like this song, not as much as some of the other songs on this first side. I like Steve Hackett's guitar playing on this one. I think it's very interesting. He uses some very interesting chords. But for me, this is more just kind of the lead off into In the Cage. Like it's setting you up for In the Cage.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with Scott. This is more of a build-up song to something more epic, but as itself, like I like the acoustic kind of folksy nature of this track. There's some really good guitar playing on it, and it's almost calm-like before you get to the craziness that's about to take place.
Okay, speaking of In the Cage, our next song is In the Cage, where Rael wakes up inside a cave with stalactites and stalagmites that are growing up around him. He doesn't know how to get out, and over to the side, somehow his brother John is there, and he reaches out and says to help him, but then John just runs off. And so he doesn't know if he's going to make it when he barely escapes at the last minute. That's the story of this song. So what do we think about In the Cage?
This song is freaking awesome. This is one of the on the album for me. I really like how it starts off slow and then it just gets faster and faster, and definitely the two biggest highlights on the song is Peter Gabriel's vocals. I think that goes without saying, and the keyboard by Tony Banks is just a masterpiece. That guitar, that synthesizer solo in the middle there, is just can't get any better than that.
Okay, this song is the definition of epic. It starts out with just like the boom, 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 boom. I got sunshine in my stomach, and like it's like kind of like you're waking up from a sleep, much like the story is telling. And then it kind of gets more frantic as it goes on. Get that keyboard from Tony makes that boom, and I love Peter Gabriel's vocals on this, especially the part where he goes, "In the cage, get me out of this cage." Down, 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 down. And then the synthesizer solo. Oh my goodness. I think this might be Tony Banks' best moment, like in the whole Genesis discography. Is you get to that synthesizer solo and he's doing all this crazy stuff, and then right before it ends, what he does on that diminished chord at the end, it's like that, and then like the bass comes like, and then it gets to the part where he's talking about he sees his brother John, and then he just like, he's like he's playing a synthesizer solo underneath what Peter Gabriel is singing, and like Mike Rutherford is just holding out this bass note. And when I was listening to it on my sound system, it kind of made the house shake a little bit because of how powerful it was. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And then at the end, you get like those pitched down vocals that are like, bow, 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 bow. It's really cool. Very atmospheric.
One thing I will mention in the illustrated videos I watched, it was by how surreal the moment is, because obviously he's in a cave and the stuff is closing in on him, but there's also imagery of him being in an actual cage and being in a straitjacket, which kind of makes the experience more unsettling when watching it that way. But as for the song itself, it's freaking awesome. This is one of the highlights on the album for sure. The production on it is outstanding. The vocals, getting into the story, it fits, and you start to realize that I think Rael he's confused like we are, but he sees, oh, there's some things I need to adjust in my life. 'Cause to me, the story feels more like a morality tale.
Yes.
It's Ray L. He's a horrible guy who's done some awful things, and he's in this hellhole for better or worse.
It's almost like if anyone's read Dante's Inferno, I haven't, but I know the story. I was supposed to read it in college, but I didn't, and I still was able to answer the questions in my literature class about it. But I know the story because I was in a literature class where we studied it, and like where like Dante gets taken through all the circles of hell, like it kind of like that, almost.
I'm also reminded of a Stephen King story called 1408. I don't know if you're not familiar with that story. This guy goes in a hotel room that's supposedly haunted, and he's a skeptic. And then he goes in there, and he's haunted by uh, pretty much some bad stuff in his past that he has to confront. It kind of reminded me of that almost, but this is that story, but like on steroids.
And drugs.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, like I said, musically the song's great. That synthesizer solo really drove this song, along with Phil Collins on drums and some really cool moments from Peter Gabriel. So yeah, this is a great highlight off of this album.
Yeah. Okay, and we're gonna close off side one with the Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging, ready to use. This is when he gets out of the cage. He sees his first sight of people inside this land, and they're all basically lifeless and just going through like an assembly line. They call it the Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging. And apparently, he sees lots of famous people. What do we think about this one?
All right. Yeah, I will admit, this is a stupid song. I will admit,
Yes.
it's goofy, it's dumb. I shouldn't like this, but gosh darn it, I love this track. It's so goofy and dumb. I just can't help but love it. It works with the story, and I don't know. It just has like a charm that I really like about it.
So whenever this song starts, you hear the stupid little whistle, and then like it kind of fades in with like a very forward moving feel to it, almost like the forward moving of an assembly line. And then all the weirdness applied to Peter Gabriel's voice. He's got like some weird vocal effects on his voice. Yes, this song is weird, but it's weird in like the best way possible. And the chorus is kind of an earworm that you'll get in your head. The great lifeless packaging is ready to use.
All right, what do I think of this song? Like Will Smith, this song slaps. I love this song, as goofy as it is. Now, to be honest, this part in the story, I'm like, what is this? For some reason, when watching the video, I thought he turned into almost an action figure, because it looks like he shrinks down in one part of the video. So I thought he was turned into an action figure for some reason. But yeah, this one I don't know if I get context wise, but man, it is so catchy, and it's such an earworm. The Green Beret, lifeless packaging. I don't really have much to add. It's another one of my favorite songs on the album, just because of how earwormy it is. And I'm pretty sure I invented a new word tonight.
Earwormy.
Earwormy.
Added to the dictionary. All right, we can flip the record over. And we're going to be back in New York City. So this part of the story is a flashback. These next like 2 or 3 songs is a flashback where Rael is remembering some of the things that he did before he got sent to this land or whatever it is. So in this song, he's kind of remembering him being a punk and doing some bad junk, pretty much.
Okay. Funny enough,
He's an arsonist. Sounds like by the lyrics.
Yeah. Funny enough, 10 days ago, I was back in New York City to watch the Rangers play.
Nice.
So I was back in New York City. But going to the song now, yeah, it's crazy. It's like boom, 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 boom. I forgot what you're singing. It's like he like sings like softly. Back in New York City. This was like my least favorite when I first heard this song with Scott when I first heard this album, but the song has grown on me. It's one. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites. Still, it's still like towards middle of the road, but I appreciate it now.
I really like this song. I like what Nick was talking about with the beginning, where it just kind of builds up to that back in New York City, and then Tony Banks's keyboards are really good. And then there's really weird but cool part where there's this weird effect applied on his voice, where he's like, it sounds like that. Which is kind of Rael's inner conflict. He is imagining that his heart has all this hair on it, and the hair is all the bad, like all of his anger and malintent in his heart, and that if he could just shave it off, that he would be a better man. And like he wants to like have a romantic relationship, which we talk about more in the next song, but he feels more like he can't because of what a bad guy he is. So you see that there's a willingness to change inside of him, but he feels like he can't. Jacob, what do you think about this song?
Yeah, this song rocks. Vocally, Peter unhinged on this song. Like he really unleashes the anger in this character and all the terrible things he's done. And it's kind of a heartbreaking song too because of that. Because you see, there's good potential in this guy, but he keeps making awful decision after awful decision after awful decision. The porcupine metaphor I thought was weird. I don't know if that would have been my preferred choice in crafting a song like this. There's one lyric in the song that kind of took me out of it. It's like, no time for escape when you have a fluffy heart to rape or something. I'm like, what? That is a weird line.
Yeah, that is kind of a odd line.
But other than that, like, yeah, this is a cool song. The kind of like the synth mixed with Phil Collins' drumming, I thought was blended really well in the song. And it's another standout track, but it's not in my top 5, but it's still really good.
Okay, now we're going to get to the first instrumental track on this album called Hairless Heart. And pretty much it's just a continuation of Back in New York City, where Rael is attempting to clean up his act a bit.
Okay, yeah, I thought this was a solid instrumental. I don't really have much else to add. It's just really it's just a track to like get us in the mood for counting out time.
Yeah, it's several of the instrumentals on here are pretty much just mood setters. Like they work in the context of the album, but I don't really think they do much outside of it. There's one though that I think is really cool, but this particular one is more just a mood setter for the next song.
Yeah, what's weird when watching it illustrated, they actually mix this track with Counting Out Time, which I think when you combine the two, it works better as build up, but as a standalone track, to me, it's just filler. But as far as the story goes, like when watching the illustrated, it was kind of surreal because you mentioned, is this still the flashback you said?
Yes, this is a flashback.
Okay, I didn't realize this was a flashback when watching it, so I thought he was still in like the mirror world, and I thought, oh, something is causing his heart to rip out and go crazy and make him go mad or whatever, and I'm like, what? This is a weird visual. At this point I was like, okay, there's some cool stuff on this album, but it's still very weird to sink in. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. Okay, now we are getting to counting out time. On every Genesis album, it feels like there's kind of a silly song, and this feels kind of like the silly song on this one, especially with the guitar solo in the middle. But this is the part of the story where Rael is like having a romantic encounter with this girl, but then it like goes south at the end, and he becomes like angry and rough again, and that sends him back to like we catch up to nowadays, or I guess 1974 after this song. So, what do we think about this one?
Yeah, this song is great. I think this is a great rock song. I think the guitar solo, the weird wanky guitar solo, is pretty cool too. I think the guitar. I think this is probably Steve Hackett's best guitar work on this album.
Oh, cool. Yes, it is kind of like has a goofy sound to it, but I like the song, and the real standout is the guitar solo in the middle. I have no idea how Steve Hackett got that guitar tone. That I don't know. It's super weird, but it works for the song. It's pretty good.
Yeah, this song is really catchy. Much like the Lifeless Packaging, this is the other big earworm on the album for me. It's very goofy, very over the top, which is kind of odd because when combined with the story, like story wise, you'd think this is a big dramatic moment. He's trying to impress this girl he likes. He's trying to, to quote Marvin Gaye, get it on. But it backfires miserably. But the goofiness of this song is what makes it stand out. That guitar solo is crazy, by the way. Like
Yes.
when I first heard it, I thought it was somebody on a kazoo almost. It was like, but no, it's a guitar solo by Steve Hackett. I'm like, I don't know how he pulled that off, but it is really cool. Like I said, this song, it's over the top and wacky, but I think it fits the album very well. And I would never in my life did I think Peter Gabriel would have a line in the song talking about a zippy zip zip.
That's Peter Gabriel for you.
I thought that was the Spice Girls.
Okay, now we are going to get to probably the most well-known song on the album, The Carpet Crawlers. And this is where we have now gone back to 1974, where Rael is back in the weird land, and he's starting to see what looks like people, but they're these creatures known as carpet crawlers.
All right. Yeah, this song is awesome. I really love this song. This is one of their big highlights on the album. This is a very catchy song. Carpet Crawlers. Great song. I think Phil Collins doing the background vocals, I believe, does a great job. He does great. Yeah, this is another highlight on the album.
This song is amazing. So I love the keyboards at the beginning, like the. And then Peter Gabriel just comes in singing, and then it kind of builds. I love whenever Phil Collins comes in on the drums. Really cool feel to the song. I love whenever Phil and Peter Gabriel like sing together, because they do that on the chorus. Peter Gabriel singing the lower part, and then Phil Collins is singing the higher part. Chorus is super catchy. Carpet crawlers, keep their collars. Gotta get in to get out. Yeah, very atmospheric. Really cool song.
Yeah, this song is amazing. This is one of the. There are several songs where no matter how much I hear it, of course, this song's still fairly new to me, but if there's some songs, especially in the rock genre, where if I hear it, it'll suck me in and get me and feel like whether I'm in the living room listening to it or if I'm driving, it feels almost like you're transported into something special. Another song this reminds me of, weirdly enough, is "Comfortably Numb" by Pink Floyd, which is they're both completely different songs, but there's something surreal about this song. It just draws me in. I don't know if it's the imagery that's in the song, the fact that it's a ballad, the fact that you got two incredible vocalists on the chorus with Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins. The way they blend on the chorus is so awesome, and it's got such a good chorus too that's so singable that you've already sung it. I don't have to repeat it. But oh man, this is such an amazing song. It's definitely up there in my song ranking.
Fun fact: the 5 members of Genesis in like the '90s got back together and did a re-recording of this song for their greatest hits album. It's kind of like a little reunion thing. And another funny fact is that this isn't even my favorite version of this song. My favorite version of this song is the live version on the Seconds Out live album, which is really cool. It's got Phil Collins singing on it. I don't know why, but I like that version even better. This one's still amazing though. They're neck and neck, but I think I like the live one just a little bit better.
So I guess the re-recorded version from '99 kind of predates the Taylor's version. It's Genesis version.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't meant to replace the original. It was just kind of a fun thing they did. I've listened to it. It's definitely my least favorite version of the song out of all the ones. But it was still interesting to listen to and hear, like the last thing that all 5 members came together to record. The next song is called "The Chamber of 32 Doors," and in this song, Rael finds his way into a chamber of 32 doors and is told that only one of them leads out, but it's not the one that you think it is. And then every time you go through a door that is the wrong one, it will just lead you right back into the chamber of 32 doors. And there's all these people in there who are trying to tell him which one is the right door, but he doesn't know who to trust. And so he has to use his deductive reasoning to find out which of these people is telling the truth and which one is lying.
Yeah, the song rocks as well. I really like the song too. Another big highlight on the album. I love the part where he goes, "Need someone to believe in, someone to trust. I need someone to believe in, someone to trust." That's to me the big highlight of the song, but I think everything else on the song is also really epic. This is another highlight for me.
I love this song. Starting out with that epic guitar intro by Steve Hackett. Oh my goodness. That combined with Phil's drumming in the beginning are amazing. But then there's lots of cool changes in this song. When he's talking about like what kind of people he would trust, like he'd rather trust someone who works out in the fields because they're more honest. It gets into more of a slower moving feel. And then it gets more dramatic, and then it goes back to the more slower moving, and it all building up to where he just goes, "Take me away," and that part is mainly in minor, but then he plays a chord that should be minor, or Tony Banks plays a chord that should be minor, but he makes it major at the very end. It's just like, bling, and it kind of ends the first side on a more hopeful note. It's like it seems like a downer, but then when you hear that, bling, it's like, okay, maybe there's a little hope for Rael here before we flip the record. I love this song. This is one of my favorite songs on the album.
So I don't know if you were following some of the discourse on the private messenger group chat, but when I first listened to this album, I wasn't too crazy about this song. I thought this was a kind of a weird way to close the album. Because I thought Carpet Crawlers was amazing. I'm like, man, why didn't Carpet Crawlers close the first half of the album? And then I listened to it again, watching that visualized illustration of the album, and I'm following the story a bit more, and I'm like, yeah, I see why it's on the album. Now, I still think Carpet Crawlers is a better song, but I think there are some really cool stuff in this song, especially on a lyrical level, like how it's telling the story of these different doors, and only one's the way out, and the different people that he's trying to see that he can attempt to trust. I'm like, okay, there's a little bit of tension in the song. It's pretty cool. I think it works better as part of the overall story, even being a standalone track. But I still think it's a great song for all the other things that you guys have both mentioned. I think it might be in my top 10, actually. I like it enough to be in the top 10.
Would you put it on your hits and more playlist?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it wasn't on there, so I thought
There's a couple songs re-listening I'll have to add to the playlist from the
Cool.
first time.
Okay, we're gonna flip the record again. Whoa! Except I don't want it to fall out. Okay.
you can put it in the backside.
I want to, but I need to look at the track listing.
Fair enough.
Side 3, Lily White Lilith. So, in this song, after almost giving up on finding the door out, Rael meets this person named Lily White Lilith, who says that she can help find the way out if he can help her just get where she needs to go. And she's blind, so the blind lady is the only one who knows the way out, and she helps him to find his way out of the chamber of 32 doors. But then she lets him know that you have to beware because death is waiting for you on the other end.
All right.
So what do we think of this song?
This is an awesome way to open up the second disc of the album. Hits you right in the face. I thought this was a great way to start off side 3.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I like it's kind of got like a rocking beginning, and the Phil Collins' drumming at the intro is really cool. The chorus is really catchy. Lily White Lily. And I like how they bring back the melody from the Broadway medley of '74 for the second half of this song. Whenever it's talking about how she's leading him into the room and that death is going to meet him, you get the little reprise of the Broadway medley of 1974, which is really cool.
To be honest, I actually did not pick that up the 2 times listening to it.
I didn't pick it up till this morning whenever I listened to it.
Wow.
I've listened to this album like 5 times.
But yeah, this is another great song on the album. It's a really cool way to open up the second half of it, part 2. Just hits you right in the guts with this epic rocker. It's got a great chorus. It continues into the weird side of the album, and it leads to some really crazy, trippy stuff. So this is a pretty good piece of the puzzle on the album. And I don't know if I'd say it's top 5, but it's a really good honorable mention. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, this is kind of where the story starts. Like, it's been weird up to this point, but this is where it starts getting really weird. So the next song, oh boy. I'm actually kind of excited to talk about this song because it's interesting. This is The Waiting Room, and basically what's going on in this song is that Rael is just waiting in this room that's just completely blank, waiting for death to meet him, and he's basically like getting paranoid and going crazy.
Alrighty then. Yeah. So on its own, it's not the best because it is weird. In the context of the album, it's amazing though because of what you mentioned with the story. I will say it does get really good at the end though, but yeah, I will agree that the second disc is very unhinged compared to the first disc.
Yeah. So on its own, this would be Revolution number 11, honestly speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But in the context of this story, like this just sounds like somebody who's just sitting there, like waiting for something to happen and going, like getting paranoid about what's going on. I think the weird sound effect portion may be a little bit too long because I like the second half when it gets into like the cool instrumental, but it's good for what it is in the story. And I watched an interview today when this album was reissued from all the 5 members of Genesis, and Phil Collins was talking about making this song, and he said that they all had a lot of fun making this song because they basically could make whatever kind of random noises they wanted to and put it on tape. And so that kind of brought my respect for the song up a little bit. And like, I don't know, for me, if you're following the story, you can just let your imagination run wild with this one and just be like, what does Rael look like while he's waiting for death in this waiting room? Like, Like, is he like whenever you hear the sounds go, is he just like, I don't know. It's good for the imagination and the story. I would never listen to this song on its own, but it works in the context of the album.
All right, so I have a lot of thoughts on this song. But before I do that, I'll talk about what you talked about, the imagination. The visualized version that I watched, yeah, the guy who illustrated it did a really good job with the paranoia. Because it's this like blank white room, and there's like this slow moving clock at the top of the waiting room, and he's like looking at it, and it's like slowly moving, and then it just won't stop. And it's like driving him off the wall because he's like, "What the heck is going on?" And so, like, because it's animated and it has like comic style animation. So, like, his face starts shaking and he's like going nuts, and it's like, okay, this is getting kind of weird. And then, like, once it breaks into I'll just say the normal side musically, where like the guitars start jamming and stuff. It's like he like throws the chair at the clock, and then he tries to escape, and then there's like a cave in, and the rocks crush him, pretty much tying into the next song. So it's kind of like that. But as far as the song itself, on its own, if this was just a regular album, I would grab the garbage can, put it up here, and say this is Revolution 11 or Rude Awakening #3. Because I'll be like, because it's kind of like those other songs where it's just everything being thrown at the wall, just for the sake of being, I don't know, very artsy fartsy, kind of like the other songs. Or even like the Rolling Stones, another example when they reprised that "Sing This All Together" song in the Satanic album. But I will say it does work for the story, and I respect it on that front. I like the second half of the song better when it's like the rocking guitars and the drums and all that. The first part, I could care less. It's just too weird for me. Like I said, on its own, it'd probably be the worst song on the album. But as far as part of the story goes, I'll give it some leeway.
Yeah, I just kind of wish that the weird, trippy part was a bit shorter. Then I would like this song a lot better. Or song, quotation marks. It's more just a soundscape that leads into Anyway. Which, speaking of Anyway, that is our next song on the album, where Rael is starting to pretty much just contemplate, like he's like, nobody's coming, what's going to happen? And he starts contemplating his life. He starts thinking of profound things. And then he's greeted by somebody who comes in at the end and is like, just a moment, Rael, it won't be long, death is here. And then, that's the story of this song. What do we think about Anyway?
Yeah, this is a really good song on the album. I really like this song. It works great as like the follow-up track to the madness that was The Waiting Room. Yeah, I really like this song.
Yeah, I think this is probably the biggest hidden gem on the album. I don't hear a lot of people talk about this one, but I like after the madness that was The Waiting Room, Tony Banks's piano comes in, and you just kind of hear Peter Gabriel just like his vocal tone is very unsure. It's like Rael would be right after The Waiting Room. And then there's this section in the middle where it just builds up, and there's this really cool drumming from Phil Collins. Very emotional and dramatic song. I really like this
one. Yeah, this is another one I really liked. I think this song has more, kind of weight to it when you watch like the visualize, because in the visualize, like I said, there was a cave in after he tries to escape from the waiting room, and he's literally being crushed by rocks. And so you really see, oh crap, okay, Rael is literally dying in this other world. And I think when you have it in that context, there's a little bit more weight to it. He's realized, what have I done in my life? And so he's like pondering all these things. He's like, is this the end, pretty much? And so I think on that front, I think that helps elevate the song a little bit more. I I think now we're at the point where there's so many cool songs on this album that even a song like Anyway, it's kind of hard to put higher on the ranking when there's other ones that are like vying for the best song on the album or top 5, top 10. So this is kind of more in the middle of the song ranking. There's some really good piano on this track that kind of fits the melancholy vibe of the song. Tony Banks is really good at that type of stuff. This is another pretty good song.
Okay. Our next song is the supernatural. I'm gonna watch this. Anesthetist, the supernatural anesthetist. I can't say it right. Anyway. It's the part where he's greeted by death, and Jacob might be able to explain what happens better because he watched the visual. But I think Rael is able to escape from death and move on to the next section of this fantasy land. But that's what I took from this song. Let's go ahead and get into the discussion.
Yeah, I thought this was a good instrumental from what I remember. Yeah, this is a really good track. I'm kind of with Jacob now, where all these songs are so like there's so many good songs where a song like this would like be towards the middle, towards the bottom of the list.
This is a good song. It's not one of my favorites. For me, the biggest part that stands out is whenever they go, "It's such a fun dancer," when that really high falsetto. I always get a crack out of that part. I don't know why that's so funny. But and probably because Peter Gabriel is playing around a lot with his vocal effects on this album. He's done all kinds of weird stuff with his voice. But it's another one of those songs that's just kind of like a little segue into like the next song. Like I feel like Anyway and the Lamia are kind of the two big like Lily White Lilith, Anyway and the Lamia are kind of the three big songs on this side, and then like the other songs are just kind of little musical interludes to get you to those ones.
Yeah, this one is interesting. I love the guitar work on this song, by the way. When I first heard this song, I had no idea what a supernatural anesthetist or whatever you call it is. So I was like, okay, I just like the musicality of this song. But then watching the video, I was like, yeah, this is definitely a representation of death. They even have like him showing up in like different forms to try to mess around with this guy. One of which is like this Grim Reaper looking type character, and another one that's like this like demon with horns and stuff like that. And then he'll like disguise it, and there'll be like this like attractive woman to try to mess with Rael's mind, probably in reference to the counting out time incident, probably. I don't know how. I can't really explain the plot on what he does in this song, whether he escapes or not. See, I thought he was dead by this point because he saw death, and the next song kind of help gets him out of it. Again, it's hard to explain that one too.
We can talk a bit more about that when we get to the end, because the end is very open-ended. I'd like to hear what everyone's interpretation of the ending is when we get to
it. Yeah, but yeah, this is an interesting track. There's nothing I hate about it, but it's not like a top tier song on the album.
Okay, we are now going to get to Lamia, and this is where it gets really, really, really weird. Basically, what happens in this song is Rael is meted by these snakes, and once again, to quote Marvin Gaye, he gets it on with the snakes. So, like, what the heck is going on here? And then they die, and then he eats them.
And I gotta say, out of all the songs, when I was watching the illustrations, this was the one I was dreading the most. But this is what they do. First off, they're not actual snakes. The bodies are snake-like, and there's tails, but it's literally they're playing with the idea that it's siren women.
Okay.
As snake, and they're snake-like, and I'm like, that makes more sense, and it's less creepy.
Okay, you have just taken a chip off of my shoulder.
Yeah.
Like every time I hear this song, I'm like, Peter Gabriel. It's not a question of what were you on; it's how much of it were you on when you wrote this. I will say though, there is a really cool visual that happened whenever they did the live tour, where like there was like this, they had this silk thing, like this silk cone that would come down that like looked like snakes. That like Peter Gabriel would come to the center, and then like the silk cone would go all around him, and then there would be a light in the middle where you could just see his shadow in the middle when he sung this song live. That's a cool visual. But what do we think of the song?
So, I'd say there's two albums that I've listened to in my lifetime that I'd say, hey, kind of like with Scott, where it's like, yeah, they were definitely on drugs, but how many drugs were they on? Was the question. And I'd say this album and Odkins Knocked on Flake for the Small Piece,
Yeah.
another one of those albums where it's like, yeah, they took a ton of drugs, just how much of it. Going to this song though, yeah, this is a very epic song on the album. Another big highlight on the album for me. I really enjoyed this a lot.
I like the song. I think it's trying to play into like the sirens of like the Odyssey. It's kind of a play on that. But musically, this is a very fantastic song. I love Steve Hackett's guitar solo at the end of this. It's absolutely amazing. And then they even referenced the title of the next song, Silent Sorrow and Empty Boats, in the song. So I thought that was a cool little touch as well.
I didn't catch up on the reference to the next song until hearing it just now the second time. I'm like, brilliant foreshadowing there, Peter Gabriel. But as far as this song, the first time I heard it, I was like, what the heck is this? I'm like,
Yeah.
First off, I don't like snakes. So when you have a song about snakes and this weird metaphor for sex, I'm like, what? So think of the Odyssey or Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And you'll be fine. But yeah, this is it's still a weird song. Story wise, I still don't fully grasp the concept of like, yeah, there's these three women in this tub, and he has like this fantasy like sexual moment with them. And then like they bite into his skin and they die, and then he eats them. So cannibalism, and then he leaves, and then like it's like a reset for the next person. So is this like a test? And if it's a test, I don't even know what the test is. It's like, is it a test to prove that you're not dead? I don't know. So I'm so confused on what actually happens in this song. But musically, the song's still pretty good. Like Peter Gabriel, like he does a. Also, I'll tell you another thing that's confusing me too. Like the whole time he's singing in the first person, in the point of view of Ray L. But here he's singing in the third person. This is another song I would argue are the two weirdest songs on the album. This one's more on the bottom of my ranking, but on a technical level, it's still pretty admirable. I still think it's better than The Waiting Room, so I'll give it that.
Okay, our final song on side 3 is Silent Sorrow and Empty Boats, and it is an instrumental. It's pretty much just Rael grieving over the death of the sirens. We will call them the sirens from now on.
Alrighty then. Yeah, this is a very pleasant instrumental to close out side 3. I don't really have more else to add to that. It's just very pleasant.
Yes, I think it's a very atmospheric way to end the third side of this record, and I think it is really cool. I like Steve Hackett's guitar solo, and I like Tony Banks' keyboards on this one.
All right. So out of all the instrumental tracks on this album, this one is my favorite. I think this song is very beautiful to listen to on a musical level. I would say the coolest thing about this whole thing, Scott being the musical expert I'm surprised you didn't mention, there's a freaking Mellotron on this song.
I wanted you to talk about it.
And they have and it's used in a way to where it sounds like this choir going, oh. I'm like, And when I first listened, I'm like, oh man, we got some cool choir on this song. And then I was scrolling through the comments on YouTube while listening to it, and I'm like, the Mellotron in this song is amazing. I'm like, a Mellotron can do that? A Mellotron can do that? I'm like, what? I'm still trying. I didn't even know what a Mellotron was until hearing the Rain song in Led Zeppelin 4 for the first time. So I'm like, I'm learning about instruments I didn't know about. So.
It's pretty much the very first use of sampling. Is it samples sounds like strings, choir, flute on Strawberry Fields Forever.
That's awesome. This
Okay,
one is. I wish it was in my top 10, but it's another case where we got like 23 songs, so it's kind of hard to like rank them when you got so many to pick and choose.
Okay, time to flip the record over once again, which I'm not going to do because I need to see the track listing. But we are now in the colony of Slippermen, and the story once again has ramped up to another level of weirdness. This is the part of the story where Rael meets these deformed creatures who tell Rael that he's going to end up like them because he's infected, and basically, if he doesn't get castrated, he'll end up like them. This is an album. This is an album with a very weird story. But I will. One note about this song. Jacob and Nick, have you seen Peter Gabriel's Slipperman costume from whenever they did the Lamb tour?
No.
You have to see Peter Gabriel's Slipperman costume.
Oh my
god. What?
And
that is not as scary as the visual I saw in the
lower parts are inflatable.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's they were definitely on drugs when they made this album. So what do we think about this song?
It's a really good song. I thought it was a big highlight on the album yet again. Another song that I feel is pretty epic, if you ask me. I really like this song. It's 9 minutes, but it doesn't feel like 9 minutes. It's
oh wow, I didn't even know it was 9 minutes.
Yeah, I know, but it feels like it goes by really quickly. I really like the song.
So there's like different sections of this song. It starts off with this really weird kind of showing like you can picture the Slippermen walking out, and then we get into the arrival section where you're introduced to the Slippermen, and there's this part where there's all this stuff put on Peter Gabriel's voice where he's supposed to be the Slipperman, where he's like, "You better run, son, and join your brother John." And then Tony Banks has this epic synthesizer solo on this. I love the synthesizer playing on this one. And I love whenever Peter Gabriel does the Slipperman voice. I don't know why, it's kind of humorous. And then we get the last section when they go to the doctor, and we'll just say something happens. What's happening in this song is very odd, but the musicality of it is very good. I really like the music of this song. It's very atmospheric, and I like the keyboard playing by Tony Banks.
I think you forgot to mention the third section involves a raven.
Oh, yeah. They put what's left in a tube, and the raven steals it. And so Rael chases after the raven to go get it. Again, yeah. What the heck, people?
All right, so my thoughts on this song. I will say this is in my top 5.
Me too.
I love this song.
It's because of the music.
I love the musicality of this song. It starts off really weird, like about a minute and a half, and it's like, I'm like, This is gonna be like the waiting room all over again. This is weird. And then you get that. You got the really cool keyboard playing from Tony Banks, and then you got the bass really kicking in from Mike Rutherford, and then Peter Gabriel starts singing. I'm like, all right, I'm jamming along to this song. I don't know what the Slippermen are when I first heard it, but I'm like, this is a cool song. I gotta share this funny story. When I was first listening to the full album, I had my Bluetooth headphones on, listening to this, and then you got the part where the Slippermen are whispering to Rael, and on the headphones, it's like one is on the left speaker, the other's on the right, and it's almost like "Hey, you gotta be like John. Oh, you're gonna be like a son." I was like, what? I feel like I'm listening to something out of a horror movie by the way it was done. I'm like, this is so weird. But yeah, this song's really cool. And I mean, this song is it's like what, almost 9 minutes long. I think it's the longest song on the album. It flies by so fast.
It doesn't feel like 9 minutes.
I am enjoying this song on a musical level. It flies by, and the story, as weird as it is very interesting. In the 3 segments where you see the horrifying, deformed nature of these slipper men or whatever they're called, and on the visualization, like the main one is literally creepy. Like it was almost like a jump scare when watching the visualization. It's not as goofy looking as Peter Gabriel's costume, but I think that was the inspiration for how it was visualized. But it's scarier in the visual and not goofy looking.
Well, because that's just Peter Gabriel in a rubber suit.
Yeah, this is more like someone trying to make kind of like a movie out of it, but in like comic animation.
Yeah.
But yeah, the doctor part was weird, for sure. I was like, when I first listened to it, I'm like, what's a plastic Shooby-Doo? I'm like, I thought that was a weird line. And then, oh, okay. And then and then you get the Raven. I'm like, I don't know what the Raven represents, but I just say it's just a Raven.
I'm like, half of this album is very, like, half of this album's lyrics are very poetic, and half of this album's lyrics are like, what kind of drugs were you on?
Pretty much. I feel like The Wall was the same way too, Pink Floyd.
The Wall makes a lot more sense. I could understand the story without even looking up anything. The first time I listened to it, I'm like, I have no idea what just happened in this album, but the music was okay.
Go off on a slight tangent. Since I've listened to the album and I've seen the movie. The Trial is one of the most disturbing songs I've ever heard in my life, especially when you watch the movie with that tripped out animation. Like, I think I literally had like nightmares. It's one of the few movies where I've had literal nightmares.
Wow.
From just some of those images. I'm like, whoa.
Man, I really like The Trial just because of how intense it is. It's like a messed up Disney song.
It does feel that way. The funny thing is, the head animator of that movie worked on Hercules.
Oh wow.
Too cool. And you see, especially when you see like the Titans in that movie, like
yeah,
you can see where he got it from.
None of them look like a butt judge, but okay, we are now going to get to
Ravine.
Yes, Ravine, which is where Rael is faced with basically just a ravine, and he's trying to survive.
Yeah, it's another just pleasant instrumental. Nothing more to say.
This is just a mood setter. It's kind of like the sound of wind and emptiness, just kind of putting you in a place. Like, if you close your eyes, you can visualize yourself in the ravine. It's pretty much just setting you up for the next song, like a lot of these instrumental tracks are.
I'm not gonna lie. Both times I've listened to it, like you know what? I'm gonna change my ranking around just mentally thinking this. I said The Waiting Room on its own might be my least favorite on the album. Actually, I think I'm going with Ravine.
The Waiting Room is more interesting.
I would say this song, it doesn't really add anything. It's to me, it's just kind of a repeat of Silent Sorrow and Empty Beds. But that one is a lot more atmospheric. This one, it just feels like a more stripped back version of it. And then even when watching the visual, I'm like, okay, it ends with, well, the last song ends with him at the ravine. The tube was dropped in the river or whatever, drowning. So he's just kind of stuck there. So what does this do? It doesn't really add anything to it. He's still at where he was at the end of the last song. So it's just like this one, I guess, is kind of like the most. This is like the filler track. But
Yeah.
this album's already massive, so I guess you could argue there's other ones like that. But at least the other songs have something to do. But this one's just
Yeah.
like,
This one is just atmosphere.
yeah.
Okay, now we are going to get to the Light Lies Down on Broadway. So the Light Lies Down on Broadway is where Rael is given a choice. He's faced in this ravine, and he sees that a portal has just opened up right in front of his face where he can see New York City, and he can finally get out of this crazy fantasy land. But when he looks over in the river, his brother John's fallen in the river, and so he realizes that the portal's only going to be open for so long, and he can either go through the portal and go back to New York and save his life, or he can save his brother John's life. And John, several times throughout this album, has just run off and not helped Rael at all. But Rael decides, I'm gonna be the good guy, and I'm gonna go save John instead of go home. And so that's what happens in this song.
Just as a little correction, it's the light dies down on.
Oh, the light dies down.
It's small change, but yeah. Yeah, I thought this was a really good song. This isn't like one of my favorites off the album, but I thought this was a good song.
I like the repeated musical motifs. The verses are from the Lamia, and the chorus is from The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I like the repeated musical motifs. And as for what it sets up in the story, I think it's an important plot point in the story, especially when you get the next two tracks and get the consequences for what Rael chooses, and ultimately the end of this album. But not one of my favorites on its own, but it definitely contributes a lot to the story.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat. It's not one of my favorites on this album. It adds a lot to the context of the story, and I think it's a pretty good little follow-up to the opening track from where it starts to where it is, where I'd say this is like the beginning of the climax of the story. Actually, when I was watching the visual, when you see the portal and you see John, I wonder if this is where Sam Raimi got the idea of the choice Spider-Man has to make in that first movie. It's like either save Mary Jane or save the kids on the whatever the thing that they're on. Like, I'm like, okay, we're going. Maybe that's where Sam Raimi got it from. I don't know.
I don't know if Raimi was a Genesis. Well, being a horror guy, he must have heard The Colony of Slipperman.
Yeah. Oh, can you imagine Sam Raimi making an entire movie based on this?
Yo,
album?
if Sam Raimi directed a Lamb Lies Down on Broadway movie, I would see it. He'd be the perfect director to do it.
Yes. He can pull off it being scary and funny.
Yes.
Like the Evil Dead movies. But yeah, I like this song fine. It's pretty good.
Okay, the next song is Riding the Scree, where Rael is struggling a scree is basically like a side of a riverbank or something, and he's struggling to keep up with the side because he's trying to stay out of the water and get John safely to shore without falling in the river himself. And I pretty much would describe this song as a Tony Banks synthesizer solo with a song attached to it.
Yeah, I thought this was really good. I'm starting to run out of more things to say. This is just another great song on the album.
Yeah, like the biggest thing about this song that stands out is Tony Banks' synth work. I love his and then whenever the vocals come in, Peter Gabriel was like playing around with his voice again. Like, evil, you got nothing on me. Here we go. But yeah, funny vocal effects, and Tony Banks' synth playing is fantastic.
You know, I almost thought this was an instrumental track because for most of the song, it's Tony Banks and Phil Collins.
Yeah.
And they are awesome on this song. This is probably the funkiest song on the album.
Yeah.
And I love it for that. I think when the lyrics come in, I do feel like it's a little too late. But even the little bit of lyrics we do get, especially when you get the broad appeal of the story, it's kind of humorous, especially the Evel Knievel reference.
Oh yeah, because we had to get more pop culture references in there.
I thought that was kind of funny. But I do really enjoy this track, though. It's especially the groove to it.
Okay, the next song is In the Rapids, which is basically just Rael falls into the river and they're stuck in the rapids. They're trying to navigate. He pulls John safely to shore, drags him off, and then he's like, "Okay, John, we're all good. You're alive." He flips John over, but it's not John. It's himself. He saved himself. So by choosing not to go to New York, Rael ended up saving himself. And we'll talk more about what we think that means at the end of the album. But for now, what do we think about In the Rapids?
Yeah, this is a good track to I feel like this is another mood setter for the last one on the album. But yeah, I thought this was good.
Honestly speaking, I feel like of all the songs on the album, this is the one that I forget the most, because when I'm listening to this album, I love this whole album, but when I get to this song, I'm usually just I'm just ready to get to It, okay? It is an amazing closer, and it's just just pull them out of the rapids already. I want to hear It. It's a good song, but I don't really remember a whole lot about it other than just the story aspect.
Yeah, story-wise, I think it's pretty good, but I think what hurts it, though, because when you think of a title like In the Rapids, you think this be like some epic song about struggle. But no, it's a lot more slower, it's more acoustic, it's a little bit more melancholy, and I'm like, I don't know if that fully mixes, or I don't think it mixes at all, actually. It kind of feels like an anticlimax almost. But
wait, I just realized something. Is the opening? Well, let me look at the lyrics to this In the Rapids. Yeah. Okay. I think I missed another musical callback. Is the melody of this song the same melody as Cuckoo Cocoon, or am I crazy? Do 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 do. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this song because I now I'm thinking that this is the same melody as Cuckoo Cocoon.
I will say, when he makes the realization that it's me, that's when it really picks up. But by then, it just ties into the next song.
Yeah, it's by this point, it's just It now.
Yeah.
That's the main part I like about this song. Is just the surprise ending. It's not John, it's me.
It's a pretty good twist.
Okay, now the last song is It. I have no idea what this song means. This is pretty much just the you decide how this song ends, or you decide how this story ends song. But what do we think about It?
I don't know what to think about what's happening, but I will say this is an epic song that is a huge highlight on the album. I love everything about it.
Yes, this is a really cool closer. I love how whenever he says it's me, you get that sound, and then I love the synthesizer that. And Peter Gabriel's vocals are very good, and just singing about whatever it is. I do like the wordplay though. It is real. It is Rael. I feel like that has something to do with the end of the album. Rael is basically real, but with the letters scrambled around. That might have to do something with the end of the album. I'll talk more about that when we talk about the conclusion. But yeah, I like this song. It's very good.
Okay. So, first time I heard this song, I'm like, yeah, this is an awesome closer. by then I'm like, I don't really care much about the story anymore. I'm just listening to it musically. But yeah, I love how rocking it is. It's got some great synthesizers, guitar work. Vocally, it's pretty good. And I would say this is some of Phil Collins' best drumming on this
Yep.
album. I think all of the members play their parts very well, and it's a really cool way to close out not only this album but also Peter Gabriel's era of Genesis.
Oh, I just realized this is the last time we're doing a Peter Gabriel album.
I think it's a good wrap up to this era, and I
Yeah.
really like it for that. Second time, I followed the story more with the visualizer, and the way it does it is you have Rael and the one he saved himself, and it's like the two merge, and then it's like he turned into some speck that floats around, and you see a bunch of imagery, and I'm like, I get lost. I'm like, it's like
Once
2000.
again,
It's
you,
like
you
2000.
decide.
To me, it's like 2001: A Space Odyssey. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but to make a long story short, it's like he sees like the monolith, and he goes with like this trippy time warp, and he turned into a space baby. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. It's like pretentious nonsense, but I like how Peter Gabriel even's like self-aware of that. It's like, if you think it's pretentious,
You've been taken for a ride.
been taken for a ride. I like how he's at least self-aware.
He's
of
self-aware
that.
that
I gotta give him credit for that, because usually I hate when stuff is pretentious. Like that annoys the crap out of me. That's
Peter
why
Gabriel can be pretentious, but he can also be very,
Yeah.
at the same time, very melodic and even commercial sounding, like Sledgehammer or In Your Eyes.
Yeah, that's why I'm not the biggest Stanley Kubrick fan. Like, I've seen all his movies, and half of them are just so pretentious that they annoy me. So
Peter Gabriel has a good idea of the dividing line between artistic vision as well as commercial appeal. He has a good ear for that. So does Phil Collins, honestly speaking.
yeah, I think this is again, I don't know how to explain how this song ends, or story ends, but as like a musical album closer, it's pretty awesome. So.
Oh, and this song also features my favorite pop culture reference on the whole album. It's the last lines. It's only knockin' know-all, but I like it. It's a reference to the Rolling Stones' 1974 song that came out just a few months earlier. It's only rock and roll. So the Stones song had only been out a few months, and they're already referencing it on this album. I love that.
I will say this: the Wikipedia page for Lamb Lies Down on Broadway has the plot summary, and all it says is both bodies dissolve and Rael's spirit becomes one with everything around him. So whatever that means.
Okay, so before we get into the top 5, I would like to know, like, how do you think this out? What's your interpretation of this? How do you think it ends? Because I definitely have an interpretation, but it's going to probably be completely different than what you guys think. Even if you want to. I know, Nick, you probably just might be like, I just want to talk about the music. But
Honestly, I don't know.
okay. For me, here's what I think. Because some people are going to say that Rael, whenever he spray painted her, he came out and like he got shot by somebody, like in a Broadway gang or something. And this is his way of going into the afterlife, and like it's kind of like a purgatory thing where they're deciding whether he's going to heaven or hell. What I think he got to go back to New York, and here's why. If you look, and I had to do some research on this, but if you look at the lyrics of "It," they're on the sleeve here. The word "it" is always spelled in italics in the lyrics sheet, and I counted it. The word "it" is used in italics 32 times in this song. The Chamber of 32 Doors said the way out is only one way out. There's 32 doors and only one way out, and "it" is used 32 times, which means that he somehow was able to find the way out. But it wasn't the way they told him. The way out is not what you think it is. So the only way out was for him to save his brother John and to change. That's my interpretation, is that kind of like Groundhog Day, Rael was put in some kind of fantastical situation where he wouldn't be able to get out until he changed. And by self-sacrificing himself and saving his brother John, he ended up saving himself. That's my interpretation of this album. Other people think that it's just Rael goes on a drug trip. But Jacob, what do you think?
All right. I like your interpretation, by the way. That would probably be the most logical, but I think I got one, and I'm going to keep it pure and simple. Rael had a fever dream. A fever dream that reflects upon his whole life, and it scars him so much that he wakes up and he wants to improve. There we go. That's
kind of like a Christmas story, or what is it? Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol. He's like Scrooge. He's like Scrooge almost. He's like a more violent version of Scrooge.
Cool. Okay. Well, what is our top 5 songs for this album?
Well, I mentioned this before. Scream. I'm going to be doing this video on my channel with Briar and Ryan Cam, so I'm going to not reveal it to you.
Okay, so check out his video for the top 5. Mine. Oh boy. Number 5, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Number 4, The Colony of Slippermen. Number 3, Chamber of 32 Doors. Number 2, Carpet Crawlers. And number 1, In the Cage. The song is epic.
Okay. Honestly, there's too many good songs. I'm just gonna do top 10.
Okay.
To give respect to a lot of these songs. Number 10, The Chamber of 32 Doors. Number 9, Back in New York City.
Oh, that's gonna be probably my honorable mention.
Number 8, It.
Oh, so many good ones.
Why do you think I did top 10?
I know.
Number 7, Lily White Lilith. And then number 6, In the Cage. Top 5. Number 5, Counting Out Time. Number 4, I had to put The Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging. That song was awesome. Number 3, The Colony of Slippermen. Number 2, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Number 1, Carpet Crawlers.
Yes. Okay. Nick is probably going to hold off on giving his score because he's going to save it for the other one. But we're now going to give our score out of 10.
No, I'll give my score.
Oh, you want to give your score? Okay. Let
Yeah.
you give it.
I'm giving this a 10 out of 10.
Okay. This is going to be crazy. I am giving it a 10 as well. There are aspects of this album that I don't like, mainly just how odd the story can be at times. But this is Genesis's most musically rich album. There's just like so much to discover in this album. Like I'm going to be honest, when I first heard this album, I absolutely hated it. I thought it was so long and pretentious and boring. I only listened to it once. And I just listened to it again recently. It's getting better every time I hear it. Whether it be noticing little things like, wow, Phil Collins' drumming is really good on this song. Wow, Mike Rutherford's bass playing is really good on this song. Like, wow, Tony Banks' keyboards are cool on this song. Wow, Peter Gabriel can really sing on this song. Or even noticing little musical motifs that are used in other songs that come back later. The story is starting to somewhat make sense now, which first time I heard it, I thought this makes no sense at all. And I will say up to this point, this is probably my favorite Genesis album with Peter Gabriel on it. Yeah, I think it's crazy that I've given this many albums a 10 so far from Genesis, but they just can't make a bad album. Other than Genesis to Revelation, which I didn't really like as much. But other than that, everything else they've made so far has just been like amazing. So yeah, I'm giving it a 10. It does have its flaws. It's a flawed 10.
All right. So I will tell you the score that I was going to give this album when I first heard it. When I first listened to this album, I'm like, yes, musically this album's amazing. lyrically, it's very dense. I have no idea what the heck was going on, and I was so confused. But I still respected it enough that I gave it a 7 out of 10 when I first heard this album. Listening to it again, watching the illustration thing, my score has gone up. But what am I going to give it?
That's what I'm looking
There are a lot of amazing stuff on this album musically. And I think if I was just grading it on a musical level, I would give it the 10. But I don't think I can fully give it a 10. This is like I think like I said the first time, this whole album is like Supper's Ready, the album.
Yes.
It's very weird.
Pretty much.
It's very bombastic. And I don't fully get Supper's Ready either, but I've gotten to a point where I really love that song for its like creativity, whatever
Absurdity.
that song is, kind of like surrealness. And
Yeah.
at first I was like, I don't know if I can fully enjoy a full album like that, but listening to it that second time, I'm like, I think I'm going to take that back. I actually think there is a place for weird albums like this that don't 100% make sense, but it makes for some interesting art. And I'm not going to say this is my favorite Genesis album. It is my favorite on a musical level. I think there's still stuff on the other albums I prefer over this album, but there's some great ambitions on this, and I love the creativity that is on this album all the same, even though there's still some weird stuff that I can't fully comprehend.
Well, thank you guys for joining. I'm really excited to now get to dive into the Phil Collins stuff. We hope to see you, the viewers, in our next episode when we talk about Trick of the Tail. Until then, remember that music is art. Sometimes that art can be very weird, but art is expression. And we'll see you next time.